Welcome to Is This a Great Game or What? And our special guest today is one of my best friends in the whole world, Mike Toomey. Really good college baseball player, great college baseball coach, managed in the minor leagues, and is one of the great scouts of all time. Toombs, we've got Jeffrey Boy here. Say hi.
Hey, boys. Morning.
Toombs, before we dive into all things baseball, all things scouts, we've got the draft, we've got so many things we want to talk to you about. We want to talk about your dad who served our country, with it being Memorial Day just yesterday on the day of airing, but I have such distinct memories of you coming over to our house. I don't know a day in my life where I didn't know Mike Toomey. And I need to ask you, who is Joe Fakouch? Because this name became synonymous. When you grow up in a family, just weird inside jokes become a forever thing. Dad, Joe Fakouch, that name is everything to us. Who is he?
I was sitting in church one day, and this Italian guy went up to get Holy Communion, and my father looked over at me and goes, "Hey, there's Joe Fakouch." And it just kind of stuck. And I started calling you Joe Fakouch. So that's how it happened. I remember it like it was 60 years ago.
Toombs.
So you're Joe Fakouch.
I guess so. And I remember being at our house and making a backyard baseball team. This was a computer game for generations that didn't grow up with it, where they had actual major league players in it. There was one that had Kenny Lofton and Mark McGuire and all these great players, and then they had Pablo Sanchez, all these fake players, but you could make your own player. And I made Joe Fakouch to be on that team.
I hope Joe's still around.
Oh my gosh. I'm so happy to have you. It's long time coming to have Mike Toomey on the pod, right, Dad?
Right. You've known Toombs for 30 years, and he was at our house when we moved here. It was so great. So Jeff, Toombs has always told me you gotta kind of be whacked to be a scout. So I went over to his house maybe 20 years ago, and he said, "Come on over, watch the baseball at my house, afternoon game." So I walk in the house, and Toombs has his radar gun out, and he's pointing it at the television. And he tells me, "This radar gun, I can check the velocities of the players, of the pitchers on TV." And I actually believed him. Toombs, do you remember that?
You believed it. I couldn't believe that you believed that I was getting the times. But, I was always a prankster and blessed to be in the game for so long, Timmy. And if you don't, with all the time that you spent on the road, and it was 40 years for me, traveling not all over the country, but all over the world, you better lighten up a little bit, or you're not going to make it. So, you
have been so many places in your life scouting players. Tell us about the time that one of your scouting directors said, "All right, we've got a small territory for you." Is that what he said to you?
Yeah, I had Bob Fontaine Sr. was my scouting director with the Giants. This started about 1982, and I had just gotten released as a manager with Pittsburgh. And I got a call from Bob, and he says, "I want you to take a train to Philadelphia, and I want you to be interviewed by Tom Haller, the old catcher with the Giants." I said, "Man, that's great. I'll go up there." And I said, "Bob, I really don't want to be a scout, to be honest with you." I said, "I'd rather be on the field. I love to teach and still do." He said, "Well, just go up and talk to Tom." He says, "We don't have a lot of presence on the East Coast. Here's some good things about you. We'd like to get a young guy over there." And I said, "Well, I'll meet with him." And Tom and I hit it off really well. I went to Union Station, and we had lunch. And so, I talked with Bob, and he said, "Tom likes you. How about coming on board?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." And finally, Bob says, "How about this, Toombs?" He goes, "Give it 1 year." Well, hell, I gave it 1 year for about 40. So I'm still here. And he goes, "I'm going to start you." He goes, "I'm going to start you with a little area. You're going to have Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, D.C., Delaware, Pennsylvania, and Kentucky. Really?
A little.
I mean, really, Bob? And this is all in the car. There's no flying. There's no cell phones. I had a Buick little station wagon. Put all my, those poles you had in the back and lined them up on the back seat. Hell, I'd be gone for 3.5 weeks at a time. It was a grind, but boy, I'll tell you what, I learned a lot about different parts of the country, met people from all walks of life, stayed in some great hotels. You remember those old down and out hotels where you pulled right up to the door? My favorite was the Y Motor Lodge in Duncansville, Pennsylvania. I'd go up to Altoona when I did pro coverage, and these guys are staying at the Marriott, and I'm staying at the Y Motor Lodge. and it was about $39 a night. But you know what? I love those kind of places because you can pull right up to the door. And I was kind of a hoarder anyway, so I just unload my stuff, and the room was from about here to the whatever. You could turn the key and break the glass, the other side of the window. But it was clean, and we had 88 channels, and we had continental breakfast. And what a bonus! And at that time, the continental breakfast was a coffee pot with your choice of white or wheat bread with Tang. You remember Tang, the old crystals that you stirred up? You stirred the Tang.
Astronauts drank.
Right. It made your orange juice. And if you hit it just right, you may have a little honey or peanut butter to go. Go get them, brother. So I was in heaven.
Toom, speaking of Bob Fontaine Jr., tell me you told me once about the three kinds of people that he would never draft. Explain, please.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it's funny. You never draft a Bubba. You never draft a Butch. and you never draft a guy with red hair. And if you think about it, there's not many guys. I think of Rusty Staub, who was with Montreal,
right.
The Grand Larage. Right. He choked way up on the bat, and which guys don't do anymore anyway. But it's funny. There's a pretty good Bubba this year that I really like is that Carpenter kid with the Pirates.
Right.
He's got a good arm.
Chandler, yeah. And he's really good.
Bubba Chandler, he's got a good arm. I really like him.
What's the problem with a Bubba and a Butch? What's those like names why don't you draft those names? They don't work?
Well, those guys in the old days, they just had all these sayings. In fact, I'll tell you a great story. Alan Marr was a young scout for us down in Florida. We went down to Florida, and I was with him this particular day, and he wanted to show Bob one of his players. And we walked down to where the field was. He says, hey, kid, where's your guy? He says, well, number 25 over there. He says, let's go. And Alan said, let's go. He goes, he hadn't done anything yet. Let's go to dinner. Toombs, where do you want to go? You want Italian tonight? The guy had square shoulders. Never draft a guy with square shoulders. There was no connection, like a Don Mattingly's that's got rounded shoulders where everything's connected. The only guy with square shoulders that I can think of in all my years of scouting that was a position player and had success, if you think about it, was Claudell Washington. Very rarely do you see a player that has square shoulders. And those old timers were adamant about things like that. We never saw that kid throw one ball. We never saw that kid take a step. We went in the car and got out of there. Done deal. Never saw him do one thing.
Todd, Father, I'm a last minute guy. Sometimes you're a last minute guy where you all of a sudden see a night open up and you want to go grab some tickets and you hadn't gotten them already. So you're going to SeatGeek and you're going to go look for a green dot and see where the good seats are and the good value is and have a little night with the fam, right?
Without a doubt. And I'm looking for some of the best seats. I'm looking for that green dot. When I get that, it's a simple plug it in, use your hands, go right on your screen, your phone, whatever platform you can get it on. And it's so simple. They make it so easy for you to do. Even my son can do it. If I ask him, hey, Blakester, let's go, man, get on there for us, find us a couple seats so we can watch even that Subway Series, that would be fantastic. SeatGeek has it all there for you.
Yeah, and the code for you, you should know it. It's Territory 10. It just gets you 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. 10% off any tickets with promo code Territory10. Make sure you click the link in the description, download the app, then the code is automatically added to your account so you can use it later.
Joe McIlvaine told me once, I'm sure this happened similarly to you, that he went to see a kid named Ty Gainey. And Ty Gainey, in the game that he went to see as a high school player, he was intentionally walked 4 times. The pitcher on his team threw a perfect game and struck out everyone. And so he went to see a kid. He never saw him swing the bat. He never saw him take a ground ball, and he never saw him catch a ground ball or anything else. Has that happened to you, where you go see somebody and nothing happens because they won't pitch to him?
I'll tell you some great stories, Timmy. I used to carry bats in my car. I had a dozen wood bats and about 6 dozen balls. And I'm pretty adamant when I talk to kids about this. Probably the most important time for you is your pregame. Especially if I don't see a guy walk twice, get hit twice, never swung the bat. A ground ball. Never saw a ball to a shortstop at some games. That pregame, and I tell the kids this, you have an opportunity to show me everything that you have. I can see the hands. I can see the feet. I can see the first step quickness, the range. I can see the carry on the ball with your arm. So my point is, any of the high school or college kids, the players that are listening, what you do prior to that game, especially in pregame, is very important. If you don't take BP, then I used to take those whip bats and say, hey, coach, can you throw some batting practice, or can I throw some batting practice? Let's get, because I'm not going to go 10,000 miles to see a kid if he's not going to swing a bat. And I'll tell you a great story. This is an awesome story. Paul Snyder, who's a Hall of Fame, one of the most well-respected scouts in the history of our game. They had Glavine and Smoltz, and Paul was the head of the Braves. There was a kid by the name of Dwight Maness at a high school in Wilmington, Delaware area. And they came down to play a team in Maryland, Paint Branch High School. They had a little left-hander, Ryan Lambert, that was a good pitcher. And it was raining, Tim. And it was just me and Paul at the game. And he goes, God, I come all the way here. I guess I'll have to jump another plane on BWI and get out of here. I said, no, hold on a second, Paul. Hold on a second. He goes, what do you mean? I said, I know a lady in the neighborhood that has a batting cage, covered batting cage. Okay? Now picture this. I said, come with me. So him and I get in the car. The team from Delaware gets on the bus. We drive the bus and park in front of Miss Waldron's house. His son played on the Paint Branch team. And she comes out with mouth wide open, eyes wide open, like, what the hell is this? And I said, Miss Waldron, I said, well, sorry to bother you, but could we borrow your cage for about 45 minutes? and here comes the team bus from Delaware. And we get off the bus, and we have Dwight Maness and Ryan Lambert. Maness hits for about 25 minutes. Lambert throws the bullpen, and Paul looks at me and says, attaboy, Toombs, you saved me a day. This has been a hell of a day. So I had the ace in the hole that day. But I think that's a hell of a story.
Right.
Wow. Listen.
Dwight Maness signed with the Mets, I think, after that.
That
So
is
cool.
incredible. That Paint Branch High School. A little
There we
reference
go.
to
Paint Branch High School.
There you go. Now, Toombs, it's not too often we get a chance to, I should say, I get a chance to talk to scouts. One of my all-time favorite movies is Moneyball, right? I think it's a great, great movie. I think in times that movie misrepresents scouts for all being those kind of old-fashioned, look at his hands, look at his this, he can't do this, because I think there's room for the numbers and the stats, in the game, but I think nothing can replace the role of a scout. You've already mentioned some things about some intangibles, square shoulders, whatever, redheads, whatever it might be. But do you have a story in which you saw something in someone, whether it was the warm-up BP or he was signing autographs in high school, or that really stuck out to you as a deciding factor, I should say, that this guy needs to get drafted, or this guy needs to make his move up, or this guy's going to be good?
Well, let me just say this first about Moneyball. And I hate to disappoint a lot of people about this movie, but I'm going to say this to you. They never mentioned in that movie one time Mark Mulder, Hudson, or Barry Zito. They were all 20-type game winners, right, for the Oakland A's.
And I think they barely referenced Tejada, by the way. I think they only briefly referenced Tejada.
Right. The only time they mentioned Hudson, I think that, the general manager went up and Bean and patted him on the rear and said, "Hey, attaboy, Hud." But for people that are not real baseball fans and thought, "Oh, this is a great movie," and it was a good movie. But think about this. When you don't mention three of the top pitchers in the game of baseball, to me, it gives a little bit of a false, picture.
Right. How
are you going to talk about development in an organization and you're not going to mention those three guys? So I think there was a little bit of deception there in that particular movie.
Yeah, there's definitely Disney magic, right? They're trying to make this more of a zero to hero story when ignoring
absolutely
the massive pitching that they had. They could make these experiments happen with, playing guys out of position and getting on base a lot because they had aces all over the place.
Right. Yeah, I didn't want to be the devil's advocate here, but I think people need to know this.
No, too.
They need to know.
I think it's totally fair to bring that up. I think it's important to bring that up, right? It's a movie, right? It's here for entertainment. It's not factual. We wouldn't find that story in one of Tim Kurkjian's books because it's not the way it went.
Right. Incidentally, in that movie, one of the guys that they mentioned was a kid that I'd signed that was like the guy that you talked about, Sandy Johnson, who's a great baseball guy. Tim, you know Sandy.
Oh yeah.
He was both the scouting director and the player development director. It takes 15 guys to do that job now. But Sandy's signed a lot of major leaguers. Wonderful guy, great teacher, and we always in the draft. He always had him in the draft room with him at Texas, and I'm laughing because there were no computers. Had a stack of papers over here for the first round guys, and then we'd have 2 to 5, and then maybe 5 to 8, and then the rest of the draft. Well, we get into the second day. And Sandy says to me, like most scouting directors say, they go, "Hey, Coombs, who's your gut feel guy? A late draft guy that you think might have a chance." And I said, Mike Venafro. He goes, "Who?" I said, "Mike Venafro. Low left-hander, went to James Madison, Paul VI High School, in Virginia. Skinny kid, not very strong, 5'9", 5'9", left-hander, weighs about 140 pounds. And I'm coming home one night from Virginia Commonwealth because I had just seen a kid that I had signed from VCU who pitched in the big leagues a little bit, Jamie Brewington. And on the way home, I saw that the lights were on at Maryland, so I pulled over there and stopped, and they ran this little left-hander out there, and he's not knocking your, impression that much with his velocity, but he's a low three-quarter guy, and he's sinking it. And he's got good movement. He's a strike thrower, very deceptive. And I said, "I like this little guy. I like this guy a little bit." So long story short, we get to the 29th round. And here we pull Mike Venafro. And Mike, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I felt good. Like you said, Jeff, I felt good about this kid. He had real good demeanor, good body language. Didn't get rattled. And he was a strike thrower. And he ended up in a really good career. I think he led major leagues batting average wise against left-handed pitchers for a long time. and did a hell of a job. And the other guy, if you don't mind me mentioning him, there was a kid at Allegheny Community College, and the coach never pitched him. I'd watch him warm up on the side. He was about 6'4", 220, great body, strong-looking kid. And I said to the coach, I said, why don't you ever pitch this guy? I mean, I'm going back and back again to see this guy. I said, he never pitches. He goes, well, he can't throw strikes. Well, it was Joe Beimel, who was a closer in the big leagues for years. And I'm thinking to myself, not going to pitch him. Well, anyway, I finally did get to see him pitch. And I'll tell you, 6'4", 220, real loose arm, good delivery. Yes, he varied his release points a little bit, but if you don't like a guy like that, you shouldn't be scouting. Well, we got him in a later round, and our cross-checker came in to see him, and they gave me $5,000 to sign this guy. I go, really? I said, can you give me 25? They go, 25. I said, don't you sign as many left-handers by the carload, guys like this? I mean, you know, he really, really looked the part, and he had a big arm, but he never pitched. And long story short, this is a frustrating thing about being a scout. There's going to be kids that you like, and you don't get them. You did all your groundwork. You got to know the kid. You got to know the family. You get them in the draft, and now you bring a cross checker in, and you can't sign the kid. Right. And that's really discouraging for a scout. But Joe pitched a long time, and he was a closer setup guy for a lot of years in the big leagues.
And do you remember the shortstop on his high school team?
I never saw his high school team. I saw him in junior college.
He
had a girl. He had a girl.
Yes.
I think he had a girl that actually played a shortstop on a summer team, if I'm not mistaken.
You told me that Joe Beimel, major leaguer, on one of his teams growing up, a girl was a shortstop, which
wow.
I
think they did, because you know where he was from? He was from St. Mary's, Pennsylvania, which, as some of the old scouts would say, back where the hoot owls make love to the chickens. I mean, he was way back in the woods. Have you ever been to Du Bois in St. Mary's County, way back there? You know, and I remember going over this little creek to watch him play. It was a pickup game. I wanted to football him in the summer, see if I can play with him. But he was playing in some pickup league that was, way back in the woods. And I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed as a scout because that Joe Beimel, that the cross checker, who was a pitcher, would not want to sign this guy.
Hey, this is the Mack Weldon line that resonates with me. The go-to choice for guys who want to look great without even trying. Hibernation time is over, and that means it's time for a wardrobe change. Bye-bye layers, hello shorts, and breathable clothing. Discover upgraded basics, fresh styles, and more at MackWeldon.com. Plus, get 20% off your first order of $125 or more with code FOUL. Mack Weldon is effortless by design, always in style, versatile, and made from the world's most comfortable performance materials. You should check out the Ace collection. That's one of the items I just got for super comfy shorts. It's clothes for every occasion. I like to keep it simple. This is for that day-to-day classic look that makes matching easy. Get moving with Mack Weldon, comfortable anywhere. Go to MackWeldon.com and get 20% off your first order of $125 or more with promo code FOUL. That's MackWeldon.com, code FOUL.
You talked about Virginia. Tell us about your trip to Honaker, Virginia that day. Who'd you see? What did he throw?
There was a little right-handed pitcher in there. He had a good arm. And, you go in those little towns in down in Southwest Virginia or West Virginia, and you'd stop at the 7-Eleven and ask them how to get the ballpark. And it was always that. You got to go down here and go right-handed and go up to the water tower. It was always the water tower.
Right.
No matter where you went, the field's over there. You go right-handed, and you stop over there. You see the smoke coming out of the barbecue, and you go up over there like this. You ain't from around here, are you? You ain't local. They said, "Oh, I know why you're in town. You're here to see Jimmy. You're one of them scatter fellers, ain't you?" So, that's just the way. That's just the way that it was. But I'm watching this kid pitch, and the father's kind of nudging up close to me. and he gives me one of these. Who are you looking at? I said, well, I'm looking at the picture. He goes, that's my boy. And I go, I said, oh boy, here we go. And he throws about 90 miles. I said, really? He said, yeah. And he says, you know what separates him head and shoulders of the other boys? He throws a monkey ball. And he's got his fingers up on the ball. It looks like a can of worms. He said, you keep an eye on it, Coach. He said, the monkey ball goes like this right there. Well, and I found over the years that sometimes when you did go to Southwest Virginia or West Virginia, that there was a lot of guys that threw the monkey ball like this. So, it's just part of the deal. I mean, that was in the repertoire.
Right.
So when all fails.
How important, Toombs, is it for a scout to obviously get to know the kid as opposed to just watching him play? I remember there was a major leaguer, we won't even use his name, about 20 years ago, and they asked him as they interviewed him, how big was your high school? And he said it was 3 stories high. That's how he explained how big his high school was. We were looking for something else, like 1,000 kids or triple,
Right.
4A or whatever. He said it was 3 stories high. Tell us about when they fill out like a little card and one of your guys had to answer the question for church preference. And what was his answer to that?
I'll never forget. We had, what's your name, address, phone number, so on and so forth. And back in those days, they had a section church preference. And I knew I wasn't dealing with the sharpest tool in the box, but under church preference, he put red brick. Now, these are the type of things that you'll come across a lot of things. Really,
right.
I mean, and this one about knocked me down. I had never seen red brick before. I mean, maybe Catholic or Presbyterian or Methodist or whatever it might be. But when he said red brick, I said, "Oh boy, that might have been wasn't red brick. It was a red flag."
Right.
Right. Yes. So Toombs, I know you've been to a lot of tryout camps. Former Major League player Jack Doherty told me once that he went to a tryout camp and he was taking ground balls next to a guy who was wearing cutoff Hager slacks and black dress shoes at a tryout camp. You must have a story about going to a tryout camp and seeing some guys who maybe shouldn't have been there.
I had a couple construction workers, and you talk about tryout camps. Boy, that's a lost entity. I'm at Prince George Community College, and I'll tell you what, we're in the Metro DC area. I used to get 150, 200 kids at a camp. Kids that had just come home from college about this time of year. The draft was earlier. And the only thing that, he's running the 60-yard dash, and he's got those boots going, and he's flicking and flailing, and he's got them feet that go out like this, Tim. The old 10 to 2, where the feet are pointing out this way. And this poor guy, he's grunting and growing, and he's running the 60, and we got a couple guys going past him like he wasn't even there. I said, how old are you? He goes, I'm 26. I said, well, what was your intentions today? He said, I just wanted to come out here. He said, I thought I had a chance to, to play for the Giants. And we were at work up here, and we had a little lunch break. And I said, what's all the commotion? Well, they have a tryout camp, and this guy actually came. He had his helmet with him. He took it off, put it on the side. He had the suspenders on, and he's trying to keep up with the other guys. Once he run the yard dash, I said, son, that's it. I said, I think you better move on. I thought he was really going to hurt himself, So, but yeah, I've come across, and I'll tell you this about tryout camps that people don't realize, Tim and Jeff, is that, you have a tryout camp, not so much that you want to sign a guy, but you wanted to see that 15-year-old that you knew that in 2 years was a follow. You had to come back and see this kid. And so that's why I had the tryout camp. But I will say this. I used to have my tryout camps right after the draft. And the reason being is because guys are going to slip through the cracks. And I would say to a kid, I said, hey, I kind of thought you were going to get drafted. He goes, Coach, they never called me. I slipped through the cracks. I said, hey, we got a spot for you. I may get a call from one of the guys in the office say, hey, we need a left-handed pitcher, or we need a shortstop. A couple guys said they're not going to sign. And I can tell you a story. Jimmy Terrell, who was a left-handed pitcher, Jimmy went to Bowie High School, and then he went to Lamar in Texas. Well, our scout in Texas didn't have a report on him. And when Bob Fontaine called me, he goes, hey, pal, I need a left-hander. You got somebody? As a matter of fact, I do. I said, I got a little left-hander. I said, he's a strike thrower. Got a good delivery. He repeats it. Not scared out there. And I said, he'll do a hell of a job for us. And he signed for a contract. He went. In fact, he did so well that the Dodgers took him in the Rule 5 draft a year or two later. Jimmy Terrell. And so that's a good time to have a tryout camp, guys, because these kids are disappointed. They weren't drafted. They're coming out, and they just want a chance.
Right.
So those are the two reasons.
Right. Toombs, I wrote a story once on Jack Cust, former Major League player, and I wrote it because of you. You told me how you found him and the training he went through and his dad. Explain what Jack Cust used to do in order to become a better baseball player. He told us during that interview that he hits every day, like 365 days a year. He takes BP. Tell us about Jack Cust.
Well, I didn't find Jack Cust. Jack Cust was a pretty well-known name up there in New Jersey, and it was a absolute production. They would let him out of school 2 hours before the game. He had a former professional player throw him batting practice with a grocery basket full of white pearl balls, and there'd be about 25 scouts every time he played. Jack was a strong left-hand hitter. Eventually, I think was first round with Arizona. Jeff was a hell of a hitter, and there was a barn out there in right field or a garage, and he used to just pelt that garage. But that BP guy threw strikes, and he just kept pumping them out there, and was one of the most impressive high school hitters in the draft that year. But I'll tell you another reason I went up there. I used to like to watch kids that were multiple sport guys. Back at that time, this is something that we don't see enough of anymore, athletes. Jack had invited me to come up. I said, I'd like to see you play basketball. Could I see one of your games? So I went up to watch him play basketball. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to see how tough, what kind of a competitor he was. Loose balls, was he diving for loose balls on the floor? How much did he get in the guy's face, defender? So on and so forth. And he filled all the boxes as far as his makeup was. And after the game, Jack said to me, he goes, hey, Mr. Toomey, would you like to come over and watch me hit for a couple hours? I mean, and he had a cage what eventually became a business up there in New Jersey. And I watched him hit for a couple hours. He didn't want to stop hitting. And after I went to his home, had great parents, great family. Father played at Seton Hall, but when you see a kid like that loves the game, and after playing a basketball game and going through all that BP prior to the game, he still wants to show you what he can do. And you know what? The good ones will show you, what they want to do. I remember I saw A-Rod in high school. Man amongst boys. He'd go down the third base line, foul territory, and throw the ball all the way over to the other foul line. Wanted to show you what he could do. So those players that have those kind of tools, they're going to show it to you. And
right.
Two
and
cases.
Toombs, when you went to look at these guys, you would routinely videotape them. You showed me videotapes of when you scouted Craig Biggio, right? I mean, what was the thinking there? And what did the other scouts call you as the guy who showed up?
They call me Cecil B. DeMille. They made fun of me. Cecil B. DeMille, the movie director. And I would just laugh because I still have Mike Messina on tape. And I have a lot of great players on tape. I have kept those over the years. And here's the deal. I could go back after the game, and at that time, I had all these wires and boxes because you had to plug into the TV at the hotel. But I got to tell you, after about 3 weeks, I had those old time scouts saying, "Hey, where are you staying?" I go, "What do you mean?" They say, "We want to see that video."
Right.
And I'll tell you what, they come, we'd be in a room together at one of those Holiday Inn Express or somewhere, and I'd get Gene Hassel and Joe Branzell, some of those old timers, and they'd say, we'd have a couple beers. And back then we used to talk about baseball. We had fun, but we were serious about the game. And I used to put that video on frame by frame, and those guys would go, "Damn, Toombs, that's awesome." We talk about when it breaks his hands and getting over his front side or opening up too soon or wrapping in the back or whatever it was. And I'll tell you what, it was a staple for me. And same thing with the hitters. And
Right.
there was a couple guys that did. We were a little bit ahead of our time with that.
And Jeff, as you remember, Toombs was a really, really good center fielder at George Washington. And then he became the baseball coach at GW and was terrific for years and years. But the best part, they used Toombs, tell Jeff and everyone else where you played your home games when you were the coach at GW.
We played our home games at the world famous West Ellipse, which was located between the Washington Monument and the White House. There was no fence. There was no stands. We had to remove homeless guys from the field prior to the game. The reason being is, now this was every game. And I know you're going to get some repercussions because there's going to be tons of people that be listening to this that have played there, coached there. And the reason that the homeless guys slept on the grates was because the heat was coming out of there. Mm-hmm. They had to stay warm. And it was heartbreaking because we had to say, "Hey, man, you got to go at least for a few hours." And, we had a laundry truck at GW. We didn't have any vans at that time. They gave us a laundry truck, and I would drive the laundry truck. And in the back, you had a caged like room in the back where the guys would sit. We had 2 benches, and driving, and everybody would be looking at us like, "Who are these guys?" And we pull up behind the backstop, and I go get them, boys. And they'd all come piling out of the laundry truck. But I'll tell you the greatest story about the Ellipse. I'm coaching third base one day, and we're playing Delaware, and they always had good clubs. And Bob, who we just lost, great man, great teacher, great coach, he says, "I'm never coming back here." Chuck Medlar, stud, who was also the athletic trainer at Penn State, "We're never coming back to this hole." That's what we got from most of the teams. I said, "Well, I don't blame you guys." I said, "What am I going to do?" So I'm coaching third base one day, and here comes a horse. A horse comes into the third base coach's box. And I go, and I guarantee you this has not happened anywhere then or since. A park policeman pulls up me and a horse and says, "Who's in charge here?" I said, "Well, I'm the head coach here." And he goes, "We got a problem." I said, "What's the problem?" He goes, "One of those foul balls hit one of the, councilmen's or senators, broke his windshield in his car." And he says, "I'm going to write you a ticket." And the horse is, neighing and up and down. I'm saying, "Boy, he's a big boy too, and I'm moving out of the way." And he signs me a ticket. I think it was a $250 ticket. He gives me the ticket and says, "Gives this to your athletic director. Have a good day." Have a good day. But that was a hell of a story. I mean, to have a horse come up on you like that and to do that. But you better have guys that could go get the ball. There was no fence, Timmy. We used to take the ground rules we're going to go from home plate to that green car down there.
Right.
And on the other side, it might be a yellow car on this side, for foul territory or whatever.
Toombs,
Well, hell, about the third
I
inning,
was an
one of those
umpire.
to pull off, and you had to make new boundaries.
Right. I was an umpire for years, Toombs,
Yeah.
and we would go to baseball fields that were just like that. But we're talking for 10-year-olds, not for college players. So I would have to make these crazy rules for ground rules and make sure everybody knows what's going on. And I felt like I was one of those guys in West Virginia giving directions. All right, if you head on down and you get to the sewer grate, that's a ground rule double. If you see the big rock, that's a homer. It's like the most ridiculous time.
We rarely lost a game. We rarely lost a game because these teams would come in and they'd be looking around at the cherry blossoms and all the tourists and all the buildings and the museums. And we rarely lost at that field. And tell you what, this is a true story, Tim, Jeff. Billy Goodman, who was a hell of a player for us, signed with Texas. He actually used to take infield with a small catcher's mask. That's how hard the field was. Wow. With a little catcher's mask, he would take infield. I mean, they never took care of the field. The DC Recreation Department would not help us. We had to try to maintain it the best we could. But there's no doubt in my mind it was the worst Division I baseball field. In fact, when you look at it, our 79 team just got inducted in the Hall of Fame at GW 43 years later. We had a great team in 79. We're playing Arkansas, Florida, Florida State, Delaware, Seton Hall, right? And they have all the facilities, and we have the ellipse. And my point is, you really got to hand it to those kids that had a hell of a team that could stay there and play there and be that successful to be able to compete against those clubs. And it was a tribute to those guys. They really did a hell of a job. We had no field. Right.
And sightseers used to walk right into the middle of the game because they didn't know what it was. Is that true?
We would have people from Japan, we'd people from Russia, and they'd be walking around. Oh, with the ball, with the baseball. They didn't know anything about what was going on. We'd have to get them to go around us. They would, and there were some days where we'd have 30,000 people at the games because it was St. Patrick's Day, and it was packed. The biggest crowd in high school and college history. Cherry blossoms packed with people. But you know what? Right. There were no place to sit. We didn't have any stands.
Right.
Yeah.
So Jeff, Toombs very humble, but he's the best hitting coach I've ever seen. He could have helped Tony Gwynn, and he can help a 6-year-old. It's amazing. Toombs, don't be modest. What is your motto about kids who need or maybe struggling a little bit? What's your motto about that?
Well, I had a player that played for me at GW, and this guy's really a piece of work. His name is Kevin Ziegler. We call him the Big Z. And he made up these business cards for me, and he called me the swing surgeon. And he put on the card, he says, if your swing's not be coming to you, you will be coming to me. so all these kids, and it was TOOMEY. So it had a picture of a guy swinging a bat with a doctor with one of those masks, you'll wear for the COVID. Like I was going to be the operating doctor on this guy. I'll save you a couple, Timmy. I still have the swing surgeon cards.
Wow.
That is so
that
good.
was fun. Oh, yeah.
All right. Now, Jeff, you got to remember that the 2015...
And I'm still working with kids, Timmy.
Yes.
Did I tell you? This past week, I was in an island called Anguilla.
Really?
Working with young kids. The people in Anguilla are looking to want to play baseball. So the government had me go there. And I had kids from about 5 to 20, and I worked with those kids over there. I still love to teach, and I especially love to work with kids that want to play.
Right.
So
And Toombs,
that was a
how
great
many?
trip. I flew over to St. Martin's, took a ferry, and went over.
So great. Toombs, how many times have you been to the country, Colombia, to work with the kids? How many times?
Well, Carlos Cheverria is a good friend of mine. He's from Colombia, and he said, "Toombs," he says, "why don't you come over to my country and watch baseball?" I said, "There's no players. They don't. That's not a baseball country." But so I went and fell in love with Colombia. We went outside of Cartagena in a little town called Turbaco, and I met a guy there, Rafa Miranda, who I eventually signed on as a scout. Great baseball guy, coached in Cuba, coached in Italy, was a professional coach in their winter leagues, and we started a foundation. And back then, we started doing clinics, and there were some great teachers in Colombia, unbeknownst to me. And about 10 years ago, Tim, we were there 15 years now. We had that foundation, and it wasn't a foundation to sign guys. It was a foundation to enhance kids' lives through baseball. And we actually had a couple guys that got to the big league. You had Julio Teran, and I signed a kid, Sugar Ramon, and you had Ramirez that played with Tampa Bay. And that one year, about 8 or 10 guys that played in the big leagues. It's kind of fallen off the talent here lately, but I love the people in Colombia. They're very loving, appreciative people, and it's always been a place in my heart. Barranquilla, the third baseman that I like, Urshela, Gio Urshela. There's been a lot of good players there, and you got the Solano brothers. Donovan Solano, his brother Jonathan, was a catcher. So there's a lot better talent there than what people had given Colombia for, myself included. And when any time anybody talks about Colombia, I perk up because I've had such great experiences there.
Right. Now, Jeff, you may not remember, but Mike Toomey and Mike Pasick were the advanced scouts for the Kansas City Royals in 2015 when the Royals won the World Series. And guys on that team will swear to you that the advance reports supplied by Mike Pasick and Mike Toomey greatly helped the Royals win that World Series. Toombs, what was it like being on the road for a month with Mike Pasick, watching these teams, knowing that the information you're going to provide to them, to Ned Yost and Dayton Moore, are really going to help them? What was that like?
Well, I think it was more like what was Mike Pasick going to do spending time with Mike Toomey rather than the other way around. But our full-time advanced scout was Zumi, Alex Zumwald, and he did it all year. And Alex did a great job. He was the head guy going into it. And whenever you have an advanced situation, you have two guys on each team. It just so happened that we were on the Yankees for about 3.5 weeks. They got eliminated, and then they put me and Mike on the Mets. And you know what? We had a lot of information. We were just spokes in the wheel, really. We gave him some little insight on certain things. But Alex was the guy that deserves really all the credit for putting all those advanced reports together. But with Mike Pasick, one of my favorite guys. I love him like a brother. Mike put up with me. Can you imagine with me for a month, 5 weeks, every day? I mean, and every time we took the subway, I would get in those turnstiles. I mean, it happened every time. I put the thing in and I couldn't get the little thing to open up, and Paige was laughing his head off, and I'm jumping over the thing. I said, "Oh, wait for me!" Trying to get in on the subway. But fantastic experience again. You felt a part of the team. We rode with the team on an airplane, and it was probably one of my greatest experiences to be a part of that. I'm very grateful. that what a great group of guys. Our whole scouting staff, player development staff. I think Zoomy's still there as the hitting coach, and what a great baseball guy he is. But he oversaw the operation. But to have the opportunity to be in New York and to see both the Yankees and the Mets and be a part of it was a tremendous thrill for me. I'm very grateful.
Right. Toombs, how much has scouting changed, certainly in recent years, and maybe not for the better? Explain that to us.
Well, I don't know how much the scouting has changed, how much the game has changed.
Game has changed, right?
The game has changed. I was talking with I'll think in a second. But anyway, I was talking the other day to a veteran scout, and I said, "Do you think that Louis Aparicio and Phil Rizzuto and Nellie Fox and Mark Belanger?" I said, "Do you think that those guys, they would even look at those guys nowadays? And isn't that a sin? These guys were some of the greatest fielders, that baseball had to offer over the course of the years. And now the name of the game is hitting. That's the name of the game. The bat plays. And in the old days, I'll tell you how it's changed, Jeff and Tim. The scouting was, if you could get a guy, the two top columns were run and throw. And they figured if you could run and throw, they could teach you how to hit. That was the thinking back, 35, 40 years ago. In fact, fielding for a second baseman and shortstop was the first category. Now it's the bat. It's the bat for everything. So if you can hit, they're going to find a place for you. Well, that's not the case now. And talking about those guys now, what do you think, Tim? Do you think Aparicio or a guy like that would shy away from those guys now? I don't think they would sign them.
I agree. And it worries me that we've lost the human element. We don't think players have instincts or feel for the game. We're just looking at their tools, where this is what made you and Mike and so many scouts so great, is you got to know the player personally. Like, tell us about Kurt Manwaring from Horseheads, New York. You scouted him. I mean, back then, this was a long time ago, but this is what was he like, and how have things changed since the days of Kurt Manwaring?
Well, I think when you talk about a situation like that, I always say two questions. And they go, "What do you mean two questions?" Back then, and I'll never forget, Jim Ferry was a scout that saw him a lot in South Carolina, and we went to Horseheads, which is Elmira, New York, where Ernie Davis is from. And we went to the Holiday Inn in Horseheads, New York, and his brother was his representative. And he was a second-round pick that year, 1986. And there was no hemming or hawing with Kurt Manwaring. His brother was Jeff. We got in the room. We talked a little bit about what the negotiations were, this and that. He signed that same day. And you know what he asked us? He said, "Toombs, when do I leave and where am I going?" That's all he wanted to know, really.
Wow.
And you know what the question is now, don't you? What round and how much? About that time, that's when everything changed. That's the first questions with the parents, with the player. But back in those days, if you had a guy like a Kurt Manwaring, who incidentally that year didn't go to the rookie league, he went right to the 8-ball West League. The next year, he was our big league catcher.
Wow.
And in the World Series. He could really catch and throw. He had survivor skills with the bat. He was a very soft-spoken guy, one of the greatest you'd ever meet. But in 2 years, he's up there in the big leagues handling those big league pitchers, and we're in the World Series. That's when we had the '89, when they had the earthquake, where I was, by the way. That's typical, isn't it? So, that's where it was,
Wow.
Yeah, it's changed, Timmy. It's changed a lot, Timmy. You only got 20 rounds now. They got rid of about 35 minor league teams. Again, the bat plays. And the other thing, too, Tim, is the arm strength. The average major league fastball now is 95 miles an hour. I think we're missing a lot of kids You look at the pitchability guys like a Maddox and Glavine, and those guys do low 90s, upper 80s back then. But what about the kid that's got pitchability, that can change speeds, that can throw a good breaking ball and keep teams off balance? How many guys you can count them on one hand, guys that hit 300 now? That's because they're getting looks at 3 or 4 different guys throwing 90 plus. Pitchers don't go, if they get 5 innings, it's been a good day. Quality start. Those are some of the main things that have changed with guys. Is the fact that these guys' arms are so good and throw so hard that it's awful hard to be able to handle those pitchers on bases.
So
I like Luis Arise. He's one of my favorite little players. Arise, he's like Wynn or Carew. You don't see those guys anymore. I pull for those guys, but you just don't see that anymore. And everything's on statistical. I'm not saying it's bad. I know that it has its place, but we have a lot of people that aren't baseball people on the job, and I don't have anything against it, but I think some of the guys, if you put them in front of a group of kids and ask them to give a clinic to kids, I don't think they'd be able to do it because they don't have a baseball background. They never coached, never played, and so I think some of us old guys that played and coached and managed, I think it kind of rubs us the wrong way a little bit. I shouldn't say that. But there's a lot of great baseball guys that are out of the game. Some are retired, guys like myself, but there's a lot of guys, Jim Riggleman, Sam Palazzo, guys like that were lifers, that were great teachers, that still have a lot to offer. A lot to offer.
I'm going to finish with one story about Frank Toomey. Frank was dying. He was on his deathbed. He was at Toombs's house, and I went to see him. This is about 2 weeks before he passed. He was really sick. And he said, "What are you doing today?" I said, "I'm going to play golf today." And of course, he was one of the great golf coaches ever. So I say, "I'm going to play in a scramble." And he gets out of bed. He is literally dying. He gets out of bed and shows me what I need to do with my hands. Make sure your grip is like this. Make sure you keep that front foot down. That's who Frank Toomey was. That was Mike Toomey's dad. He got out of bed. He could barely walk. He could barely stand up and showed me what I needed to know to play well that day. Wow. Toombs, you remember that day, right?
Yeah, I remember like it was yesterday. So he was a beautiful guy. He taught right up until the end. Again, blessed to have a father and a mother like that. Absolutely.
Right.
Well, Toombs,
thanks for having me today, boys.
This podcast is a love letter to fathers and sons everywhere. The amount of messages we get where people say, "I feel like I'm with my dad when I listen to your show." That's our intention, is to share our love of the game, our love of people, our love of laughter together and make people feel closer to their family. So, Toombs, long-awaited guest on Is This a Great Game or What? Thank you for joining the show.
It's an honor to be with you. God bless. Keep up the great work.
Watch out for that monkey
Say
ball.
goodbye to Joe.
All right.
And remember, if your swing's not becoming to you, you'll be coming to me.